Hello, good evening. Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove and welcome to our 46th step through the Bible on our walking tour. And we've arrived at the mighty book of Deuteronomy. And I say mighty book because it's an incredibly important book, as a matter of fact. Now, whenever you come across a book, you first say, oh, who wrote it? Well, for the vast majority of the books of the Holy Scriptures, we don't know who wrote it. Or where did it come from? Where was it published? Well, we do know a little bit about the book of Deuteronomy's origins, much more than we know about other books of the Bible, which just sort of appear. If you look way ahead to the second book of the Kings, chapter 22, it's talking about the reign of the king Josiah, who is a very good king. And in his 18th year, he sends some instructions to the priests in the temple. And the priest sends a letter back to Josiah saying, we have discovered, I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord. That's all he says. He doesn't say how he finds it, where he finds it. He just says he's found it. Now, the king before Josiah the two kings before Josiah were extremely wicked. So there's a possibility that the book of the law had been put aside, hidden, neglected. The priest says, oh, look, I've just found the book of the law. Then Josiah has the book of the law read to himself, and he rends his clothes because he sees how little the Jews have been keeping the law. Then he summons all the people. The book is read out to them, which takes all day. And then they say, this is the law, and we will keep the law, and the covenant is renewed. Now, this book of the law found by the priest Hilkiah in the sanctuary is, we assume, the book of Deuteronomy. Now, it's possible, of course, it's the basis of the book of Deuteronomy, and this book of the law was then somehow or another edited or updated or rewritten to produce the book of Deuteronomy we now have. The other thing that is also clear, now it's really getting complicated at this stage, so just hang on in there. The other thing that's clear is the person who was responsible for the book of Deuteronomy, the edition of the book of Deuteronomy that we've got, was also responsible for putting into its final form the history of the kings of Israel. That is to say, the first two books of Samuel and the first two books of the Kings, Kings 1, Kings 2, Samuel 1, Samuel 2, which was essentially one very long book. That is to say, which we refer to, or scripture scholars refer to as the Deuteronomical history work. In other words, the Deuteronomist, as we call the person who produced the book of Deuteronomy, I won't say the writer, the editor perhaps, or the person who gave it its final shape, also gave the final shape to the history books. In other words, the history books are an illustration of what will happen to you when you keep the law of the Lord, and what will happen to you when you don't keep the law of the Lord, and the law of the Lord as laid out in the book of Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy has some very, very clear things to say. For example, it foresees that the Lord should only be worshipped in one place, and that should be the temple in Jerusalem. That's why, using the book of Deuteronomy, Josiah then reforms the religious practices of the children of Israel by closing down all the other temples and just having one temple in Jerusalem, making sure people worship in that temple and that temple alone. Whereas before that, there had been various high places, such as Shiloh and so on and so forth, as we'll see when we finally get to the books of the Kings. Now, this is important because the Deuteronomist, therefore, is the person who gives shape to a very, very large portion of the Old Testament. The other thing is this, the clue is in the name, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomos is Greek. Did I say Latin? I meant Greek for the second law. In other words, the law, version 2, the law, Mark 2, the second book of the law. It repeats a lot of what went before, but it repeats it in a way that's enriched, if you like. So we have two versions of the Ten Commandments. We have the Ten Commandments in the book of Exodus. We have the Ten Commandments in the book of Deuteronomy. So we have a choice which one we follow. They're substantially the same, but there are certain differences. So the book of Deuteronomy is, if you like, the final codification of the law of the people of Israel. And as such, it's got a lot to tell us. The other thing about the book of Deuteronomy is obviously the person who crafted the book of Deuteronomy wanted his book to have maximum impact, and therefore the entire book is a series of speeches by Moses. It used to be the case that the church taught that all the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, were written by Moses. But this is something we no longer believe, simply because it's clear that there were many hands at work. But the Deuteronomy work gives the impression that it's all straight from the mouth of Moses. Therefore, Moses is the giver of the law, Moses is the supreme authority, and therefore his words have great authority as well. And of course, there's a great smoothness about Deuteronomy. There's a great unity of style in Deuteronomy, which there wasn't, for example, in the Book of Numbers. The Book of Numbers, as I said, it's not really a book, it's more a compilation. It's more a compendium of various works that have been gathered together and put together and labeled the Book of Numbers. The Book of Deuteronomy is truly a book in which the joins are not clear. In other words, they've been smoothed away. So what we'll do as soon as I get round to it, tomorrow perhaps, is we'll look at the first speech of Moses and what the Book of Deuteronomy has to say to us. One of the problems we've got sometimes is we say, well, we are not bound by the law of Moses, therefore the law of Moses is of no interest to us. Actually, we're not bound by the law of Moses, perfectly true. We're not bound by the laws to do with dress and the laws to do with diet. We are bound by the ethical laws, though. And therefore the books of Moses, the Book of Deuteronomy has a great deal to say to us, because we are people who follow a God who is our lawgiver. That is one of the ways we approach God. The law is God's gift to us. And sometimes if we forget this, or if we become antinomian, let's say against the idea of law, we miss out a great deal. And one of the big problems modern people have nowadays is they don't like laws, they don't like rules. In fact, we should like laws and we should like rules because they're a sign of God's love to us. All the best. See you tomorrow. Bye.